Hello scholars, my name is Dr. Bob Remedi, and I am going to be your biology teacher this semester. Now this semester I'm teaching both anatomy and physiology and environmental biology students, and this video is going to be appropriate for both of them. I will make a couple of small tweaks as we go through so that students know what they need to know from this. For the anatomy and physiology students, this is going to be the first in a series of videos every week for the first 8 weeks. For environmental bio people, this will be the one and only video I'm making that you will need to know, not related to coursework. What I do need everybody to know though is that this video here will be fair game for test number 1. So please make sure you make preparing for this video part of your test number 1 preparation. All right, so I want to start by talking a little bit about how people learn, because I want you to know there are things that you can do to learn better, faster, more efficiently. But the way that you studied for previous classes might not be good enough for this class. Perhaps the environmental biology people, if you studied in a way that you were successful, that you may be able to continue studying that way. However, my anatomy and physiology students, those are the folks that are going into nursing, dental hygiene, medical imaging, medical school, dental school, physical therapy school. This class prepares you for those higher level classes, and there's a good chance that this class is going to require a greater commitment to studying than any class that you've ever had before. In fact, and I do bring in quotes to kind of back up what I'm talking about here. So neuroscience researchers have made it clear that learning is an active process and learning takes work. This is not something you're going to be able to just kind of slide through. You're going to have to be intentional about how you're learning the material in class. And this goes for both A&P and environmental biology students. The important thing to know is that learning is a skill that can be improved upon. Whether previous experiences in learning have been easy or challenging, people have the potential to learn new things. This is called a growth mindset. And A&P people, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's important to know that if you've experienced difficulties in the past, those are in the past, and that doesn't mean that you're going to experience difficulties in this class too. So we're going to talk about how to learn better, faster, more efficiently, and help you be successful here, which is my goal. So for the anatomy people, the success tool assignments that we do this semester will help you develop skills and habits to make you a better student. If there's any environmental biology students who would be interested in learning these things, talk to me and I can make these videos available to you too. The important thing to know is, just like learning, this is not going to be a passive process. So if you want to take what you learn here, you're going to need to apply it in order to translate to better grades in this class. So, how does learning work? Within our brain are cells called neurons, and anatomy and physiology people will spend weeks talking about neurons. This is good stuff. But those neurons, there's 3 of them right there, are able to do something interesting. Neurons make connections with one another. You can see some of the connections over here. Those connections are called synapses. When you learn something, new connections are made. So you are literally making physical changes to your brain. Now, when you activate those synapses, when you use them multiple times by reviewing, quizzing yourself, applying what you're learning, you keep these synapses, and that information is going to be stored for long term. So synapses can get stronger if you use them, or they get weaker and eventually get broken, and that information is then forgotten if you choose not to use that information. So your brain is efficient. It's going to keep the synapses that it's going to use, and it's going to break the synapses that are never used. If you want to remember something, you got to do things to keep those synapses intact. And in fact, most information that is not used is then going to be forgotten. Here's an example of this. Think of the last person that you ran into. What was the color of their shirt? chances are you looked at that person, saw their shirt, acknowledged the color, but because you never did anything with that information, you forgot it. So in order to learn, we've got to use information multiple times over multiple study sessions, and we've got to test ourselves on how much we retain, so that when we identify the things that we haven't learned yet, we can put intentional effort into doing things to reinforce those synapses, or if we've forgotten it, to build some new ones. This little device that we see here, this little flow chart, talks or shows us a little bit about how learning happens. So here's some incoming information. For instance, you looked at somebody's shirt and you saw that person has a blue shirt. If you choose not to use that information is only good for about 1 to 3 seconds in most people, and that's going to be forgotten. However, if you pay attention to the shirt, if you realize, oh, that's kind of a cool looking shirt, or if you think, ooh, I'm going to want to remember that shirt for some reason, by paying attention to that information, you put it into short-term memory. And as the name implies, short-term memory doesn't stick around very long, another 5 to 15 seconds. If we do something to use that information, if we apply it, if we assess it, hey, what color was that shirt I just saw? All of these types of things are going to help that information go into long-term memory, where we're going to reinforce those synapses. And if we want to keep that information, we're going to have to consolidate it. We're going to have to use it, apply it, and assess it multiple times in order for that information to stick around. And if at any point we don't do that, we're going to break those synapses and we will forget that information. So, purpose of this video is to give you concrete things that you can do to make sure that you remember this stuff. So here are some study strategies to help maximize learning. Number one is retrieval practice. There are a lot of things I can talk about, but in its most basic form, retrieval practice is quizzing yourself to see how much you remember. Like, do you remember that little memory aid, the flow chart we had talked about just 30, 45 seconds ago? Can you use and apply the information in long-term memory? So if you have a fact that you're trying to remember for the long term, can you do something with it? Can you teach it to somebody else? All of these things help reinforce those synapses and make them stick around. Can you summarize what you just read or just learned about in terms of facts, terms, ideas? All of these things help to put this into long-term memory, reinforce those synapses. You can also do things like answer questions at the end of a text or at the end of your ebook. You can discuss what you've learned or read or worked with other people. And again, teaching somebody else, even somebody who's not in this class. Powerful ways to remember information. And the smart students, the successful students, are the ones that are going to set aside time every week in order to do this. I need you all to know, just reading over your notes is not going to be an effective way to study. Reading over tricks you into thinking that you're doing something. What happens when you read something over? You recognize, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar. But if you're not testing yourself to see how much of it you recall, you're essentially wasting your time. You're not getting very effective use out of the time that you're putting in there. Spaced practice is something else to be thinking about. So you have to study more than once, and you have to leave time in between your practice sessions. In anatomy and physiology, I recommend you spend between 10 and 12 hours a week studying for this class. For the environmental biology people, I'm going to really encourage you to do between 5 and 7 hours a week for this class. But let's just use the 12 hours as an example here. You could do this a number of different ways. You could have 6 2-hour study sessions, and that's going to be way better than one horrible day where you're going to try to study for 12 hours. I got news for you. You're probably not going to be that effective doing that. There are a few people who can, but most people can't sit down, chain themselves to the desk and say, I'm going to stay here for 12 hours. You're going to get tired. You're going to get distracted. and you're probably not going to be reassessing your learning to see how much of it is sticking. So putting your studying over time, 6 2-hour study sessions, for instance, gives you multiple opportunities to reinforce those synapses, allows you to quiz yourself on what you've learned, allows you to review the stuff that you've forgotten. And if you're anything like me, I know it's a little uncomfortable to go back and say, oh, I forgot this stuff. No. It's in the struggle. It's in the going back over something and saying, oh gosh, I don't remember what X, Y, or Z is. It's in the struggle to do that and going back and practicing it again and again and again where the real learning happens. And there's lots of evidence to show that time between study sessions, I'm not talking weeks or months, I'm talking hours or days, causes better remembering. Elaboration is something else to think about. So connecting new information to things that you have already learned. So you're adding to existing knowledge, you're using what you've learned in earlier classes or earlier in the semester, which we will be doing quite a bit of in this class, and then using what you've learned earlier to explain what's going on now. Powerful tool. It can be done very easily by asking why and how questions. So for instance, let's say you're trying to learn the layers of the skin in anatomy and physiology. And by the way, that's a possible essay question coming up in a few weeks. You've got the dermis, which is the deeper layer of the skin, and what we see here is the epidermis, and there's 5 layers of the epidermis. Stratum basal, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum corneum. Ask yourself questions like, if you've damaged your skin, if you've had a burn, if you've had a cut, how is it that knowing that it's the cells of the stratum basal here that do mitosis to make new cells, how does that help you understand how you heal after you've had an injury? Or a lot of fun can be had by making mnemonic devices. So last semester, I gave my students an opportunity to create a mnemonic device to remember the layers of the skin. So the mnemonic device the class came up with was rude people break stuff, gaining loud consequences. And I know that's kind of silly, but rude people stand for the 2 layers of the dermis, the reticular layer and the papillary layer. And then B, stratum basal, S, stratum spinosum, G, stratum granulosum, L, stratum lucidum, and C, stratum corneum. This silly sentence, it's a great way to help remember this stuff. Dual coding involves using both words and images because our brain uses different areas for words and different areas for images, and by using them both, making connections between them to help you remember stuff better. So they're activating different parts of your brain. So concept maps like flowcharts, I showed you the flowchart earlier on about how learning happens. Here's a flowchart we're going to learn week 2 or 3, talks about something called negative feedback. We'll discuss this in class anatomy, people. Pull up pictures from your ebook or from your lab book. Draw your own pictures. In the open lab I was in last semester, I had a student who was studying the eye, and the student came up to my whiteboard and drew the picture from memory. Made a few mistakes, went back, erased the mistakes, fixed it, and I took a picture of her fantastic work there. It's a great way to remember stuff. And you can make your own whiteboard by getting little sheet protectors and putting it on a picture from class, or just a blank sheet of paper, and you can use dry erase markers on those. You can take pictures of models or specimens with your cell phone and label the different parts. So here you see a leg with some of the muscles labeled. And when you're planning to study, make sure you incorporate all 4 of these: retrieval practice, spaced practice, elaboration, and dual coding. And by the way, did you notice how I used retrieval practice here? Talk about these 4 things that we were just talking about. All right, so some other things you can do to help become a more effective learner. Sleep, really, really important. Sleep seems to be important in the formation of long-term memories. It turns out that getting a good night's sleep might be the most helpful thing in preparing for an exam in the morning, besides the regular studying and stuff too. So, if you're not getting between 7.5 and 9 hours of sleep each night, there's evidence to show that you're probably sabotaging your own learning. So, I hate to break it to you, cramming and all-nighters are horrible ways to study. Research was done on this, students who were given a fake exam to study for, and they had the students cram the night before they were given this exam, and some students did well, some students did poorly. But unbeknownst to those students, they gave them another exam 48 hours later, and the average amount of material that was remembered after 48 hours of cramming was 8%. 92% of the material was forgotten. So please, please, please don't use cramming as an effective tool for studying for this class. There's some evidence to show that exercise helps learning and helps with memory. And there isn't any particular guidelines on what makes good exercise. So it could be walking, could be playing basketball, sitting on a balance ball, doing yoga, martial arts. All of these things count as exercise and will help you learn more effectively. In addition, neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that were released by neurons during exercise, help improve focus, motivation, mood, and self-discipline. So think about making exercise part of your study routine. Focus on what motivates you. There's probably a good reason why you're taking this class. Are you looking to take this class to get into some career program? Are you looking to earn more money? Are you looking to do something to give you a sense of accomplishment? Focus on what your long-term goals are and make sure that when you have a bad day or when you're studying for a test, you remember what that goal is, and that's going to help you persist in studying effectively for this class. One way of doing this is with a dream board, and I'm going to give the anatomy and physiology students an opportunity to do a dream board for points. So stay tuned. All right, so it's going to be important to plan to study. So for A&P, I'm going to encourage you to set aside at least 10 to 12 hours a week. For environmental biology folks, I'm going to encourage you to plan at least 5 to 7 hours per week. And there are some of my other students in the open lab. Okay, what can you do to use that study time effectively? So turn studying into a game, not a chore. See how effective you can get at studying. So before you begin, ask yourself what you're going to learn about, and then study according to your study plan. And then at the end of your study session, see if you can, in 30 seconds or a minute, summarize what you just learned. You don't necessarily have to remember everything, but thinking about what you're learning and being able to summarize that is making sure that information is going into long-term learning. Make sure you study in an environment that is good, someplace with a lot of light, room to spread out. Make sure you don't have any distractions, and that includes electronic distractions. Turn off your phones, put them on mute or airplane mode. Don't let them interrupt your flow when you're doing your studying. And set yourself a goal. So say, I'm going to study for an hour, and at the end of an hour, I'm going to give myself a little reward. So then you can have 10 minutes of phone time. Then you can maybe get a snack. Maybe you can do a little bit of exercising. All of these things should be part of your plan. So are you ready to plan? And as a result, study and be successful in this class? I hope so. And I hope you know I'm here to help. So for anatomy and physiology students, I'm going to talk about a couple things that are going to be required for points to be completed by the end of week 1. Environmental biology students, this is the end of the video for you. But if you want to look and see what I'm having the anatomy people do, I can certainly give you these activities not for points, but to help you be a little bit more successful. So, anatomy and physiology students, the first thing we're going to look at is there's going to be success tools assignment number 1, which is going to ask you to list out all of your priority activities in a week. And then you're going to rank them. Are they number 1 most important, or are they number 4 least important, or are they somewhere in between? We'll use this information in a few weeks to construct an actual study schedule. The second thing you're going to do is make a dream board. And I can tell you this is an enjoyable activity. Most of the students I talk to say, hey, you know, it was kind of fun. But more importantly, it's going to give you something to help motivate you when times get tough. So you can use a poster board, you can use a bulletin board, you can do a digital document like Canva allows you to do this. You're going to create a visual representation of what you want to do with your life or who you want to become. Things that can go on your dream board include your career goals. And if you have more than one career that you're considering, put more than one down. Who are the important people or support systems in your life? Put them down there so you know who you can lean on when times get tough. Put a picture of yourself in a cap and gown, even if it's many, many years old, to reinforce that you're doing this in order to earn your degree or earn a credential of some sort to move on to bigger and better things. Put pictures of things that motivate you. So other people, cars, vacations, positive affirmations and quotes, and objects that have meaning or represent something that you aspire to. So maybe a picture of somebody performing the career that you're interested in. And again, this exercise will provide a visual reminder of why you chose to be relentlessly focused on succeeding in this class. And then once you're done, if it's a digital document, make it the background on your computer. If it's an actual poster, hang it up where you can see it and be motivated by it every day. This assignment is going to be graded on how well you communicate your goals and the things in your life that will help you be successful in this class. In addition, you know, be neat, be complete, put some effort into this. I promise you, you will get more out of this assignment if you put some time and effort into it. And here's a few examples of dream boards that I've taken pictures of over the years. This is a student who wanted to be a dentist. It's a student who wanted to go into dental hygiene. So, we're at the end. I need you to know I'm glad you're in my class, and I'm going to work really hard to help you be successful here and go on to do great things. Please use what you've learned in here to get a good start on this. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you around.